My name is Ali, I'm a doctor and YouTuber,
I'm Taymor, I'm a data scientist and writer,
and you're listening to Not Overthinking.
the weekly podcast where we think about happiness, creativity, and the human condition.
With Adrian, I'm Adrian, and let's have some fun in day 8 of Yoga with Adrian. Today we're going to be working those abs. Let's get down to it, or something like that.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
at the end it's very kind of like, thank you, pat yourself on the back for showing up and, giving this time to yourself. Thank you so much for watching the video. Namaste. And then it kind of like closes that nicely. It's so nice.
Oh.
It's very delightful.
So you're saying I'm a bit like Adrian?
I'm saying your vibe is a little bit like the delightful vibe of Yoga with Adrian.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes.
So yeah, that's me. How about you? What's up?
Yeah, man. Things are going good. Took delivery of the new Tesla yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So that was fun. It's been good. I've been avoiding mentioning it on the Instagram because I want to save it for the video. And I know no one listens to the podcast anyway.
Yeah.
So when the video comes out, probably entitled something. I think I'm going to call it something like how I bought a Tesla Model 3 half price or something like that.
How did you buy a half price?
I mean, it's just a
tax
kind of,
loophole.
yeah, explains all the tax loopholes when you buy stuff as a business expense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Nice. So you've driven the car a bit.
Yeah.
What were your expectations going in?
So I test driven one a few months ago, and when test driving it, I was kind of struck by how actually it didn't feel radically different to a normal car.
Right.
And now that I've driven in it for several hours, it does feel subtly different to a normal car. Like there are some bits of it, like if you're driving at 70 on the motorway, where it broadly feels the same as a normal car. But it's when you're driving on like smaller streets in town that you really notice the acceleration of it. Also, the autopilot thing is pretty cool. So it basically drives itself when you're on the motorway.
That is pretty
Or
nice.
any kind of dual carriageway. All you have to do is keep your hands on the wheel
Yeah.
and give it a little nudge every like 10 seconds or so to remind it that you're still holding your hands on the wheel. But otherwise, it follows the lane markings. It doesn't crash into the car in front of you.
Right.
You basically don't have to think at all when you're driving on motorways.
What was the trigger that made you decide to get a new car now?
Partly my old car was playing up, and so about twice a month it just won't turn on.
Okay.
This was a little bit annoying. Partly it's because I've had getting a Tesla Model 3 on my bucket list for the last like 3 years.
Really? I didn't think you were like a car guy.
I'm not a car guy. I'm a tech guy. Come on,
Okay.
Taymor. It's tech on wheels, as MKBHD says.
Right, yeah. What is actually the appeal of the Tesla thing? Because, like, look, I'm not really a car guy. I wouldn't really say I'm a tech guy either. Like, I mean, I don't know, whatever. But, like, what's like the appeal of getting this Tesla Model 3 if you're not a car guy?
Car guys don't get Teslas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, like,
Only tech guys get Teslas.
but like, if you don't care about cars, what's the sort of...
Okay, so I don't care about cars, but I do spend a lot of time driving.
Okay.
And I do care about tech, so I like, feeling like I'm an early adopter generally when it comes to tech and stuff.
Okay.
I like things that have good user experience,
Okay.
and there are various tax loopholes that let you get a Tesla for pretty reasonably priced in the UK. And so it was almost a no-brainer. Plus,
No. I'm asking
Yeah.
why. You said you've been sort of fantasizing about this for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm asking why is that the case? Like, presumably 3 years ago, you weren't drooling at the tax loopholes, and it's more of like a fundamental thing that makes you fantasize for something. Personally,
I fantasize about a Tesla Model 3 as much as I would fantasize about the Pro Display XDR.
okay.
If that
daily.
gives you exactly, if that gives you an insight into my psyche.
Okay.
But probably more so than the Pro Display XDR, because I know I will get zero use out of a Pro Display XDR,
Okay.
other than the fact that it's just a pretty looking screen. But given that I spend like literally hours and hours and hours and hours every week driving,
Yeah.
it feels like a high enough measure thing that I was like, okay, if I can make this process just like nicer in certain ways, then that would be kind of nice.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it was like always one of those aspirational purchases that if I were ever to get to the point where I had so much money that I could blow
Yeah.
X amount on a car, then it would be a Tesla Model 3.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So working on a few videos about that. We're going to do one about how I bought it half price. Going to do a vlog video about it. Going to do a first impressions video about it. And yeah,
Gonna milk it for all the content you can.
absolutely. I've got to kind of make back the cost of the car with all the content. So the plan is one Tesla video a month, I think, at least.
Solid.
So that's the main new thing that's in my life. I've named her Hermione,
Oh, okay.
which I told a few people about, and they said, it's a bit weird, but it's very on brand. I was like, that's exactly what I'm going for.
Yeah. Good stuff. What are we actually talking about in this episode?
We're talking about how this episode is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant is the ultimate platform, online courses platform for learning anything maths, science, or computer science related. You're into maths and stuff, and your maths brethren actually think Brilliant is pretty legit, don't they?
Yeah, Brilliant's really good. You should definitely sign up. You know, we were at this party today, and someone said, actually, multiple people said that. Well, one of them said, so I think she said something like, I just don't get maths, or I'm just really bad at maths, something like that. And then someone else said, I feel like maths is one of those things that like you either get it or you don't. And I don't know why, but people just like, I think there's generally a bit of a fixed mindset problem when it comes to learning stuff anyway. But maths seems to be this special thing where everyone has like a really fixed mindset about it.
I think drawing as well. People have a fixed mindset about drawing.
Yeah.
Drawing and maths are the two things. Languages sometimes as well. Oh, I'm just really bad at languages.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. But look, there's no need for this fixed mindset. You can get better at this stuff. I think it's quite useful to get better at this stuff, and brilliant.org/not overthinking is a good way to do it.
Well done.
I think that's enough of a plug.
I think that's enough of a plug. Yeah.
All right. So, look, we don't have a topic this week. We're just going to talk about random things that have been on our minds. I have a couple of things. So the first is, the first is at this party there were a few kids, a few children. And so you can imagine.
Okay. Don't do a devious laugh when you say, "Hey, there were a few kids at this party."
I didn't mean that as a devious laugh. I just meant that as a like, here, everyone's thinking, here we go with the kids.
Think about how an uncharitable person would interpret your laugh after being like, "I went to a party and there were some kids there."
No, but
continue.
Okay.
I get you.
So there were some kids at the party, of varying ages. Then I guess the notable ones were
problematic.
notable as in the ones who were like hanging around us. One was like 4 and one was 7 in age, and we were interacting somewhat, and obviously I was thinking about, I was thinking of them as people and taking them very seriously. But I did find myself falling into some strange patterns, and like I found myself like really thinking about, kind of overthinking the interactions, So one thing was that like, I don't know, I feel like maybe some people do this, some people don't. Oftentimes when you'll like, when you'll like meet or interact with a young kid, you might like affectionately like, pat their head or something, or just like
Stroke them a little bit.
just some like friendly, affectionate physical contact. You might do something like that, and historically I would have probably done something like that. For example, if the kid is like standing right next to me, their head or their like will probably like reach up to my hand, and so you might just like put your hand on their shoulder or head or whatever and say, "Oh yeah, how's it going?" kind of thing. And I was kind of thinking, at this party, I was kind of thinking, well, I had the like instinct, there's no way to say this without sounding weird. I thought about doing that, but then I didn't do it because I thought, I don't know if I should be doing this anymore. I'm actually not sure where I stand on that front, to be honest.
So you were thinking of patting a kid on the head, and you decided that that's inconsistent with your treating them as adults.
I don't know if it's. I don't know. It's tough. Okay, so that was one thing, and we'll get back to that. And then the other thing was that I found myself.
This is unacceptable.
I found myself just like lying to one of them about my name, just like as a joke.
So you straight up lied to the kid about what your name was.
Yes. As a like a teasing sort of joke.
Paint the picture for us. Relive the moment.
All right. Don't make me do it. No, okay.
Well,
so
the kid didn't have a choice, did it?
All right, so there was like 3 of us. There was me, this other guy who's, I don't know, a few years younger than me, and then this kid who was like 7 years old or something, right? And she asked the other guy what my name was, and then the other guy said, "Why don't you ask him yourself?" And then she asked me what my name was. And then I thought, I don't know what... I told her my name. I had the same name as the other guy. You know, it was a bit of a joke. We had a bit of a laugh about it. Like, you know, she knew I wasn't, you know, telling the truth or whatever.
You sure?
Sorry?
You sure?
I don't know. Maybe. Anyhow, look, I did it. Look, I don't.
You feel bad enough about it.
I don't know if I feel. I don't know where I don't know if I think it's problematic. I think there is, you know, there is such thing as just like playful teasing or joking around or whatever, right?
I think there is, but I think in that context, you're sharing an inside joke with the 18-year-old guy who's kind of with you in this group, and the joke is sort of at the expense of the 8-year-old. This is, you know, if you imagine doing this to any other group of people, I mean, it would just be a bit problematic. The joke is that you're clearly giving her a fake name. He knows you're giving her a fake name. She is kind of like, oh, there's some kind of joke here that I'm missing. I'm not really sure what's going on. And then kind of just like, you know, embarrassedly kind of laughs because she's trying to not make you lose face.
All right, I think you're taking a bit far there, but okay, yeah, I think that was maybe problematic. I think that was problematic, actually. Right, I shouldn't do that.
Do you think if you'd called yourself Spider-Man or something instead, it would have been... I mean, it would have been funny, but would it have been...
Had to be there.
Would it have been less problematic in your mind?
Yeah, I guess the danger with like calling, you know, lying about your name being an actual name is that it might just be it might mislead them.
Yeah.
And like the goal wasn't to like mislead and have, you know, the joke wasn't like, haha, we've tricked her. You know, we've tricked
I guess it's more a case of wanting her to be like, no, that's not your name, that's his name.
Right,
and kind of drawing her into an interaction.
It's that kind of that's the teasing that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, rather than like, haha, you don't know my real name.
I got you now.
Yeah. So, and look, I think that is actually how it came across, but I don't know. I think if that's actually how it comes across, and it's clear that you're just kind of playing around, I don't think that's problematic.
No, sure. I mean, if that's how it comes across,
right? And yeah, I guess the Spider-Man thing is different because it like there's no way they'd take that seriously, and so it's clear that we're all just having a little game. We're playing a little game. So
the game is I've got you now, you son of a bitch.
That's not the game.
Throwback to episode 53.
Is it really 53?
I think it is 53.
Okay, yeah. So look, that was one thing. I think there is a danger of overthinking these things.
Oh. Oh.
And I think like that genre of like, you know, playing that kind of game, as long as everyone is clear on it, is fine. I think that's fine. I'm gonna go on the record and say that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm sure people all around the world
Yeah.
have been unsure about how to treat their kids the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then the sort of, you know, sort of
wanting to stroke the child without the child's explicit consent.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a tougher one to just. No, here's the thing.
Are you going to appeal to common to the common law or to
Roman law,
statutes of Parliament?
Maritime law. That's a Arrested Development joke. If
Right.
anyone watches the Arrested Development. Look, here's the thing, man. It's just also like context dependent, you know. Like, I remember being affectionately touched or stroked as a kid. I was really into it. I'd love to like sit on people's laps, like hug people. That was my jam, you know.
Mm.
And I definitely know kids. I definitely know kids who are into that. You know, like we have like a niece and nephew in Pakistan. They're the best, man. I love them. And yeah, we just, you know, they like to sit on my lap. We kind of, yeah, we do that kind of thing.
Okay. I hope no one takes this episode out of context.
Right. And yeah, that's like how they enjoy interacting. And I think lots of kids are like that. I'm sure some kids aren't. Yeah, look, it just depends on the context. I'm not going to try and lay down any blanket rules here. I'm not going to fall into your trap. You know, you're trying to get me to say something that either incriminates myself or is a position that I then have to hold for the rest of my life. And I'm not going to do it.
I'm not trying to get you to say anything.
Yes, you are.
I'm just trying to understand why you decided to, why you felt the urge to stroke a child against their consent.
It wasn't against their consent.
It wasn't explicitly with their consent.
Right. I think in a lot of social situations there is an
Implied.
element of tacit consent.
Implied consent.
Right.
By the fact that they're still in your lap.
Right.
They're probably consenting to the stroking.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess my conclusion is that I guess it depends on context. In this case, I was like standing there overthinking it. I decided not to do it.
Oh, that's why you had a vacant expression.
Yeah, just like staring into space.
You're like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's that. So that was one thing.
Cool. I have a thing, and then we can go back to yours.
All right.
One of my things. So this week, or is it? I think it's this week. Yeah. I've been taking part in the Building a Second Brain online course by Forte Labs.
Why are you whispering?
Huh?
Why are you whispering?
I'm not whispering.
You're speaking really quietly.
Am I? Oh, I thought I was kind of mirroring your tone.
Oh,
A little bit like conspiratorial, as it were.
All right. Anyway, so you were building a second brain this week.
I was building my second brain this week. So this is a series of like live Zoom calls, which you're doing with like 1,000 other people from around the world. And also, I'm an alumni mentor this session, this kind of batch. So every week, I've got a group of students who are looking to me as some sort of mentor, and we're going through some of the exercises of this thing. So in my mentor session this week, I had 300 people attend it.
Yeah.
And these are all, like, I was looking through the introductions thing, and, you know, there's like a load of software engineers, there's people from all over the world, there's some management consultants, there's some people who work at Google, people who work at creators, and that sort of, just like a very general broad mix of professionals who can afford to spend $2,000 on an online course
Right.
to build a second brain, so like productivity nerds.
Yeah.
And they were kind of looking to me to kind of lead this session. And this got me thinking a lot about imposter syndrome. And generally just how that comes about. And I have a few thoughts about imposter syndrome. So I think one of them is that imposter syndrome comes when I feel like imposter syndrome is when we are in a position where we feel we don't deserve to be for whatever reason. And I think the only other circumstance, well, the biggest circumstance in my life where I can remember this was when I was the director of the hospital pantomime in my 5th year of medical school. The other guy who was directing it with me was like a theater, like, you know, he was sick. He was like, you know, been in theater his whole life. He was a thesp, a proper thesp. Really funny, could sing, could act, blah, 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 the whole shebang. And I always felt very imposter syndrome-y, kind of, you know, ostensibly co-directing with him.
Right.
And I remember when I would like lead warm-ups, you know, we'd be doing things like, uk, alea. And then the people would be like, uk, alea, a peri tiki. Yeah, have you done these like acting warm-ups?
No.
Okay, so imagine, I'm going to paint the picture for you. Imagine you've got everyone, all kind of 50 people in your ensemble around, you know, sort of standing in a circle with you're in the middle.
Okay.
And now imagine you're like striking a pose, like, you know, warrior one from yoga, and looking into the distance and saying, uk, alea. And then everyone else has to strike that pose and mimic your tone.
Right.
And then you might kind of like tap your chest, a peri tiki tumba. And then everyone, a peri tiki, amasa, masa, masa, amasa, masa. And then you go, eo, leo, leo. And then everyone shouts it to the audience, and you kind of repeat that as kind of like a warm-up.
Right.
And when people were, the first time I did this, when people started following me, it was the most bizarre sensation in the world.
Yeah.
Because I guess part of me just assumed, why the hell would anyone be following me doing this utterly stupid, ridiculous exercise?
Well, was there part of it? I think
they did.
I think you before that, or maybe probably even now, you're a little bit uptight physically, I would say, and like so it was like striking this pose and saying the stupid thing. That must have been difficult in itself.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And then, but it was a case of cool. I guess I'm doing the warm up this week.
Yeah,
everyone kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Someone needs to lead it.
Right.
I guess I'm in that position.
Yeah.
And the thing that's similar about both these contexts is that I feel like a lot of the imposter syndrome stuff comes when we're looking at we're very much kind of looking inward, kind of like the spotlight effect. Like we feel everyone else is actually judging our performance, but in fact, everyone is all probably just worried about how they're doing in the thing. Like I had a strong feeling when I was directing this pantomime, and I have evidence of this in my journal, which I kept at the time.
Oh, nice.
That I get the feeling that everyone in the cast looks at me and thinks kind of, what is this guy doing here? He doesn't know anything. He's not directing us properly.
Yeah.
But in reality, everyone in the cast is just worried about their own lines and hoping that their performance is absolutely fine. They're not in a mode where they're judging me in any sense at all.
Right.
And equally, when mentoring this Building a Second Brain class with all these people who sort of seemingly were more or less, professional people, as problematic as that phrase may be.
What do you mean more professional people? What do you mean?
As in like.
They were older than you, basically?
Yeah, they're older than me, and they're like, high up in various different fields, and I'm just some kid who makes videos on the internet. That kind of vibe.
Okay, yeah.
And they all seem to be looking to me and like asking very reasonable questions and sort of actually wanting my input on this stuff.
Yeah.
And before the session, I kind of had this view of like, why would they care what I have to say? And then during the session, I kind of realized my previous lessons from the directing of the pantomime, which was that actually they're all just worried, trying to keep up with the course and trying to get value out of it. So in a way, in that position, me as the mentor is like a different. It's like stepping into a role. Like I'm giving a performance, and the performance is for the benefit of the students.
Yeah.
And my own ego and my own sense of self has absolutely nothing to do with it. And so that was kind of thoughts about imposter syndrome that have been floating around in my head.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think it does come down to this like sort of inflated sense of self, really, because I think like in most of these situations, I think the thing you said about it being a performance in a role, I think that really resonates, because I think to a large extent, and look, I might be wrong here. I think this depends on the domain. I think there are certain domains in which this doesn't apply, but there are definitely certain domains in which, you can be a complete non-expert. You can just like read the handbook the day before so that the material is fresh in your head, and then you can sort of teach it to a group of people just by being like the person
who's read the handbook.
The person who's read the handbook and can just like walk them through it. And crucially, the person who they have decided that I'm going to be receptive to what this guy is saying, and we're not this like group session is not going to turn into carnage, because collectively everyone's decided that they're going to be receptive to what you're saying, and they've decided to listen to basically like shut up while you talk. And so I think oftentimes all it takes to sort of teach a group of people or to do something like this, and again, depends on the domain. I feel like it probably applies to this domain. It might not apply to other things like, I don't know, a maths lesson or something where people can actually sort of ask a difficult question that you have to answer in a sort of unique way specific to that question, right? Stuff like that. I feel like, a lot of this kind of stuff just comes down to the collective decision of like, all right, we're going to listen to this guy and we're going to like, be receptive to what he has to say, rather than like anyone thinking like, who is this mental guy anyway? How professional is he actually? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like in school where if you have a teacher who the class kind of respects, then everyone has decided that they will do the respecting.
Right.
But if there are some people that don't respect it, if that tips into the majority or even a significant minority of people that don't respect the teacher and thinks they don't actually know what they're talking about, it just become like it's almost like the social contract that we implicitly sign where we agree to accept the other person as our leader.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And anytime someone says, hang on, the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Why are they our leader? Yeah, for sure. I think one nice term that sort of captures a lot of these relationships, and it's kind of like how I try to think about these things, is to, I think, yeah, one framing to sort of get rid of the self in these situations is to sort of think of yourself as a steward of the idea or something, rather
Ooh.
than as I am the teacher, or like
Yeah.
I'm the master. And yeah,
So a steward rather than an expert.
I am just a steward of these ideas. They're just like flowing through me. You know, they got to flow through someone. I think. Yes, I think the role of steward kind of suggests that you're just kind of guiding people through, rather than like
Like showcasing or
right, yeah,
demonstrating
yeah,
or
yeah,
teaching
yeah.
actively.
And so yeah, I think I've started to try and think of myself as a steward in certain contexts, and I think that really helps kind of detach the sort of sense of self from the whole thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's similar to the model I have in my head of how I make YouTube videos. Like I think of myself as, like for example, if giving advice on how to study for exams, there would be way too much imposter syndrome if I build myself as the expert and this is how it's done.
Right.
Whereas I think of myself as I think in my head that hey, it's more like, you know, these ideas are here. Here's what the evidence shows. You know, here's what I found useful. Here's what some people found. You know, here it is. Take it or leave it. Which is sort of like this idea of being a steward of the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the steward thing is a good segue onto one of the other things I wanted to talk about, which is that, so I think probably like 2 weeks ago now, we moved out of our flat in London for the rest of the year. My co-founder is going to Germany to spend some time with his family for a few months. And so we moved out a couple of weeks ago, and we threw like a big party on the final night as like a final huzzah to the community that we've built.
The Last Supper, almost.
The Last Supper kind of thing, yeah. And so we had like a bunch of people over, maybe like 20, somewhere between like 20 and 25 people over or something, which was like way bigger than any gathering we'd hosted before. And I think ordinarily I'm not a huge fan of big gatherings. Like I much prefer the sort of smaller dinners with maybe like 6 people or something. But we thought, okay, we'll try it out and see what the vibe is. And I think part of me was kind of, you know, I think we had a bunch of people there. I think people were kind of having a good time. And as the host, I think like part of me was kind of thinking, well, I think my default sort of thing is like, oh, you know, I want to sort of have good interactions with people and stuff. And like, oh, I want to like be, you know, there's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to like be funny and, you know, all that kind of thing. And then I sort of felt myself sort of thinking that a little bit. And then I kind of stopped myself. I was thinking, no, that's a silly way to look at it. I think my role as the host is really just to be a steward of bringing these people together. And that's what matters here. And I think, yeah, like during the night, for most of it, yeah, you kind of move around, make sure everyone's happy, comfortable, make introductions, you know, grease the wheels a bit, but you don't really get a chance to really sit down and properly chat to any people in particular. But I think like seeing the role as like, oh, I'm a steward here, you know, this isn't about me. This is about bringing people together, right? I think that was like a nice framing. And it was definitely a different vibe to the usual kind of intimate dinner sort of thing. And yeah, I think the intimate dinner, the appeal is kind of like, you know, we're all gonna deeply connect and make progress on big ideas, of course.
How we treat children, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, just as a hypothetical.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the appeal of an intimate sort of dinner, but. And previously, I never really liked these kinds of things. I don't know if to be honest, I don't know if I would like it as an attendee, but I think as a host, it's a different vibe because it's really it's like the honor of bringing people together and helping other people have a good time, and it's like an act of service, really.
Yeah, you're stepping outside of the self,
right? Yeah,
to facilitate this.
Right. You're
gathering
exactly, and that's like a very nice kind of vibe in itself. And so I was kind of thinking that, you know, actually a big thing like this maybe once every 6 weeks would be quite fun, and then smaller dinners like once a week or something.
Yeah. And
then the nice thing is like, so I don't know, people started arriving, I don't know, like 7 p.m. or something, 7:30, and then I think by like 11 or midnight, most people had left, and then there was like a core group of believers who were still there. until I don't know, like 2 a.m. or something. And then there were like sufficiently small numbers that everyone was kind of chilling intimately, and so you still get a bit of that vibe. And so I think previously, previously when I thought about like big gathering type things, in my head it's like, oh, there's all this like mingling and stuff, and I don't know, maybe I'm not too into that. I don't mind it, to be honest. But I kind of see that as like, that's just like the warm up for like the true believers kind of after party sort of sesh, where the wheels are greased, and the good stuff comes out.
Yeah, this reminds me vividly of an experience I had in my third year. So at the start of my third year in 2014, it would have been, when I had just become president of the Cambridge University Pakistan Society. And our friend Zain was the vice president of the society, and we hosted like a freshers sort of chill type meet and greet in Emmanuel College, and then we had like the after party in my room, which like sort of between 20 and 30 people were piled into my room kind of for this after party. And I remember vividly having this experience of, because I think at university, like when you're a fresher in those sorts of contexts, it's all like fresh and exciting and it's new and everyone wants to meet you. When you're a second year, you are the person who is like meeting all the freshers and doing all, and sort of being kind of the social butterfly as a second year.
Right.
But when so I've kind of very readily fell into those roles in my first and second year respectively.
Yeah.
Then in my third year, when I was the president of the society, and I'd been the guy who'd been there for the longest amount of time.
Yeah.
It was very much more a steward role. And I remember, so it came to like we'd ordered pizza and someone had to go and collect them, and we were thinking, it makes sense actually for me and Zayn to just run over to the pizza place and collect the pizzas, because we're here to kind of facilitate this vibe.
Yeah.
And I remember having this chat with him as we were walking there, thinking that this feels kind of weird, because like this isn't about us anymore. This is actually about just bringing this group of people together, and they're all having fun without us, and we are just providing the venue and providing the food and providing the drink, and just kind of just generally making sure no one feels left out.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, but it's also a very kind of a zen feeling. I sort of imagine imagine you're hosting like a cocktail party or something, and then you kind of stand on the podium and just kind of look around and you kind of smile at everybody, like, people are having a good time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it's like a really nice feeling.
Yeah.
And even then, after most people had left by midnight, there were a core group of people, kind of me and my closest friend, and a few random freshers who didn't have anything else to do that night, and so they chilled. So I think it was nice to have the option of extending it to a more like intimate thing. Steward rather than expert.
I think like thinking of oneself as I think it's just a helpful frame in a lot of contexts where we might not expect. Like with this kids thing, right? Like, I really,
You want an expert, you're a steward of the idea.
I'm a steward of the idea. There's this quote of like, people don't have ideas have people or whatever. And I think I subscribe.
I haven't heard that one.
Oh, okay. Well,
good.
Yeah.
So how does the quote go?
That's the quote. So like, I think in lots of settings, the steward framing is sort of more appropriate than the self-centered framing, and that's something I will be meditating on.
I wonder, are there, now that I think of it, are there any circumstances where the self-centered framing is actually helpful relative to a steward framing?
The thing about social interaction is, it takes two to tango. There is yourself, and then there is the other person, themselves.
Profound. Who'd have thunk it?
Write that down. And so like, there's definitely some semblance of self in like a one-to-one interaction with someone else, right? And like, I don't think it's crazy to sort of be aware of yourself in that kind of thing. So like, I think there definitely is a place for self-centered has negative connotations, but a more
egocentric.
Just
self-aware, what's the word?
Right. Whatever. There's a role for the self, but I suspect our default is to sort of strongly play that role more so than we need to, and in more situations than is required.
Yeah.
Mate, my thing stopped recording.
Why did your phone stop recording?
I think it stops at 30 minutes or something.
It doesn't.
I didn't touch it, mate. All right, we're recording again.
Another thing I want to talk about is that earlier today, I attended a kind of Zoom call, which was like a kind of business coaching growth type mastermind call,
Okay.
which I've never done before. So it was me and it was these 3 other dudes. They all run varying degrees of internet businesses. A couple of them were writers. One had published like 5 books. One was working on some courses and coaching and consulting, and generally sort of making money through their own personal one-man startups, essentially.
Okay.
And this was interesting because it's sort of like a very specific social vibe. It's not quite like as free-foot flowing as, for example, a dinner with friends. It's more like, okay, we're doing intros and now everyone has got the floor for about, 15 minutes or however long they want to take to just kind of self-centeredly talk about the problems that they're facing. And then the other people just ask them questions or give suggestions here and there, or maybe like, oh, this reminds me of an experience I had with this.
Yeah.
And it was just like surprisingly helpful. And I think it was surprisingly helpful for everyone.
Really? What kind of stuff came up and what kind of stuff came out of it?
So, for example, one of the guys is working on his 6th book, and he's been struggling to make the time to write this book because he's recently got a newborn child, and
Yeah, whom he takes seriously.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think the child is probably at the age where it's like 4 months old.
Okay.
I don't know to what extent you can take a 4-month-old seriously, but
Right.
we'll park that for now. I'm sure he's taking the child seriously. He's taking the child so seriously to the point where he feels like he doesn't have the time to write this book.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the thing that he came to, he said to the group is like, yeah, I'm just really struggling with like general productivity and like finding the time to talk about this thing, to kind of write this book.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because there was one of the other guys is working on his YouTube channel, and said that the thing that he struggles with is kind of, he's got like all these different things going on the side, like speaking, consulting, writing books and things, but he wanted to work on this YouTube channel. And he said the things he's struggling with is kind of just making the time and sort of getting into the flow state and sitting down to do the thing. And then we all kind of shared some views on that and sort of made like a sort of a commitment to the group that, okay, like everyone has an action point. So for me, it involves setting up a landing page for this new course that I'm working on. For one of the other guys, it involves writing the first draft of the introduction and first 2 chapters of his book. For one of them, it's releasing sort of 3 videos a week type thing on his YouTube channel. And it was all such basic stuff.
Right.
There was nothing groundbreaking at all about it.
Yeah.
And yet I still went away from it thinking, oh, wow, this was actually like refreshingly helpful. And I actually came away with some new insights, and I now feel that because I've made a commitment to these 3 other random dudes on the internet that I'm going to do this thing, I'm now actually going to do the thing.
Oh, nice.
Have you done this sort of semi-structured setup before?
Semi-structured setup. No, not in like any remotely structured way. No, I wouldn't say so. Like occasionally we have like a call with, various like friends / advisors of ours. But it's not like a group thing. It's more like us and them. That's it.
Yeah. So I'd been kind of hearing of this general mastermind idea for ages, because a lot of tech people seem into it.
Yeah.
You go camping to, I don't know, Yosemite or something, with a group of like 8 people who are all working on internet businesses, and you live in a cottage, and
that's
every night you spend 3 hours, every person has half an hour type situation, and everyone talks about how these are literally the best thing ever. And so I tried several months ago, I think I mentioned it on the pod, I tried recreating this scenario when having lunch out with some of my boys from university.
Oh yeah.
And sort of we all had kind of 5 to 10 minutes to just kind of talk about ourselves and the problems that we're facing in our like personal lives and with work and stuff. And I feel like it really brought everyone closer together, and it gave us the opportunity to talk about things that ordinarily wouldn't have necessarily come up. Like one of them is talking about how he hates his job and is like this and that. Another one talking about how he's struggling with like visa issues and he doesn't know where his life is going. And this sort of stuff that doesn't tend to come up
Yeah.
very, very organically in conversation.
Yeah, I think there's like the general. I know I certainly feel this. Maybe other people feel it too. There's like a general sense of like I shouldn't talk about myself, and like there are appropriate times and places to sort of start going off on one about like your visa issues or whatever, right? Whereas I suspect, like, you know, when you're with friends, I'm sure they'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, on the note of talking about oneself as well, I sometimes have this thought when I'm in a social interaction. Usually, it's sort of, well, it's I've experienced this one-to-one, but also in a group setting where someone is talking about themselves, and I feel I'm really glad someone is talking about themselves right now. And then I think, hang on, I step outside of the interaction, kind of in my head, and think,
Yeah.
this is weird. Like, traditional advice for social interactions is don't spend too much time talking about yourself. And yet it almost feels like a relief, especially in a group situation where not many people know one another, where someone has
Right.
taken the floor and is kind of moving the interaction forward.
Yeah.
And then I kind of think, maybe I should be more okay with telling a story about what happened to me or something, because I feel like generally my life is quite interesting with the whole kind of YouTube stuff going on.
All right.
But I often feel a sense of I don't want to talk about this because it feels way too self-indulgent, etc., etc. And I was talking to Molly about this like several months ago, completely randomly, and she mentioned how a lot of the times the stories that she tells to her friends are about me, and I was like, okay, and often kind of like making fun of like something absurd that happens in my life. And I asked her why this was, and she says that it's because she feels I lead a life that is different to the life that most of her friends lead,
right?
And therefore it's just like a nice thing to talk about, and people want to hear about it.
Yeah.
And so that also got me thinking that maybe I should be more open to talking about this kind of stuff,
right?
But it feels like weird to do it because I think, for example, if you run your own startup or something, and you're in a group of people who don't appreciate that world,
right?
It could come across as braggy for you to mention anything about it at all. Like, hey, if you even mention that we were talking with some investors the other day, you run the risk of sounding a twat.
Okay, sure.
And so that's kind of a thing in my head that stops me from talking about myself, and I don't know how legit it is.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this recently as well. I think it sort of depends on the context. I think like there are certain people who might be similar to you and me, for whom you kind of, the thing you're thinking in an interaction is like, I want the other person to be like having a good time or whatever. I'd rather they're doing the talking than me for the most part, right? And the issue is that when you have two people interacting who both have that policy, then
it gets very weird.
Then it's suboptimal. And I have people in my life whom I think sometimes I know that we both have that policy, and so one of us has to be proactive and take the first step. We can't just So
you talk about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it very I find it almost jarring when people ask me questions about myself, because I kind of feel like I'm the one asking the questions here. I've read all the books. Yeah. I know that I should be the one doing the question asking. Because to be a good conversationalist, you should ask good questions.
Right. Yeah. I think I think that there is an element of that, but I think it just depends on the crowd or whatever. Like, for example, if there is a group of new people or whatever, and it looks like no one's going to be proactive and lead the conversation or something, it might be appropriate for you to say, oh man,
them trains.
Yeah, how about those trains? Let me tell you about the train. No. Oh yeah, I think there are certain situations in which it would be perfectly appropriate for you to kind of make the first move and volunteer something about yourself to kind of get the ball rolling. And I think it's just like context dependent. I think there are if there's a group of people and they're kind of chatting or whatever, there are definitely times when it's not the right context to then volunteer some random thing about yourself.
Yeah.
But there are definitely times when it's sort of is a good thing to do. And yeah, like one thing that I always think is like, all right, is the other person the kind of person that's going to volunteer random stuff about themselves? If not, like, and like if they're also the kind of person who's going to generally be asking me stuff, then I should just be much more open to, you know, volunteering stuff, you know, and they'll be happier about it, and it'll kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a bit of yin and yang.
Very good. I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because mostly with like close friends, interactions tend to be more an exchange of statements as opposed to explicit question and answer.
You always say this thing. I'm not sure how true it is. I think it depends on like the context. Like,
for example, when you and I talk, we almost never ask one another questions. We just say stuff.
yeah, sure. But if I'm like, for example, we're having brunch with my friend Mac tomorrow.
Yeah.
Probably say, hey, how's it going? How has your week been? How is X thing going that we talked about last time? You know, there's definitely going to be questions asked. It's not going to be exchange of statements. I guarantee it.
Sure, but we / you don't see Mac very often. If it's, for example, like imagine the people that you used to talk to at school.
Yeah.
You would never ask them, how was last night? It's just not a thing. It would just be an exchange of statements.
Fine. Yeah, fine.
And that is how kind of like close friends and family interact with one another generally.
Fine.
And so when it I often have that in the back of my mind, kind of when there's a silence, then I think, okay, at this point, just making like an observation about something or volunteering something about myself, which feels like tries not to feel too self-centered, will kind of move things forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I think there's definitely a place for volunteering.
That's kind of the vibe. At this party we were at earlier today, I was trying to do the game where you don't ask what someone does.
That was pretty easy at this party, I think.
So I failed it with the first dude I tried. You know that like old guy who looked like the Hulk.
Oh right,
yeah.
Look, to be clear, not the Hulk. He looked like
the human version of the Hulk.
He looked like Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah,
very like, different implication.
Yeah, you know, he had his slick back hair. He had a good outfit.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of chatting with him a little bit back and forth, and then I felt like very quickly it came to a place where the ball was in my court in terms of it was now my turn to say something.
Right.
And I felt like I didn't have anything to say other than, so what do you do?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was like, damn, I lost the game.
Yeah.
There's a game that I will continue to endeavor with.
Wait, so how did the conversation go? You said like hi, whatever. Presumably one of you said so. How do you know the people here?
Yeah, that was the first.
Yeah, okay. And then the ball was in your court at the end of that. E4, E5 kind of thing.
Yeah, E4, E5 kind of thing. And then I did like
knight.
Knight C3, Knight F6.
Okay, yeah.
And then at that point, I was like, okay, let's bust open the center with D4.
Okay.
And I busted it open with, so what do you do? Which actually, led the interaction onto varying interesting things. But I sort of felt a bit like, I would have liked for this. I would have liked to do more small talk.
Yeah, like
more talking about nothing.
Yeah. That is a quote of mine. So you can attribute that to me.
Talking about nothing, as Tamar often likes to say.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm still not sure how much I buy you talking about nothing.
Sorry?
Because talking about nothing is basically means small talk.
No.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
And the majority of people would say they like to move past small talk in a conversation. And asking what do you do gives you a lot of hooks to then get other commonalities that you can connect on. Like he says, he works in tech. I'll be like, oh, okay, that's automatically. Well, what kind of tech? Oh, he works for Coursera. I'll be like, whoa, no way. It's not quite the same as brilliant.org for not overthinking, but it's pretty good. And it just kind of leads a conversation, and it breaks open the center essentially. Whereas when you're doing the small talk, you're like kind of doing pawn to h6 and then doing pawn to a3.
Right.
And you're just doing a little bit of these like pointless little moves.
Right.
That aren't actually taking the game anywhere. That's a good analogy. I should write that down.
Let me have a think about this. I don't think you've quite grasped the essence of talking about nothing.
Okay. So we've been recording for 50 minutes, so maybe we can have a think about that and discuss it in the next episode.
All right, fine. Let's do that.
Should we end that? Let's read a review. We are now rank 187, up by 21 in Apple Podcasts Australia for society and culture.
Fantastic.
And we now have 4.8 stars from 1,892 ratings. Thank you, everyone who's reviewed the podcast. Please do leave another review. We have a review from Vietnam by Zuckerberg1207. He's the real deal. Entitled For Ali Abdal. Oh. The review says, "Thank you, best podcast ever."
Well,
okay, hang on. Here's a proper one. Here is one from Ruby Start 99 from the US&A, who presumably is a she, says, "A welcome break in my day. I discovered Not Overthinking after hearing about it in one of Ali's YouTube videos with Tamor. While the titles are not of the clickbait type, I have been pleasantly surprised by the high quality of these episodes, which have been a combination of relaxing and thought-provoking, with a dash of humour." Probably from you. She hasn't said that, but that's like the insecure part of me talking.
I see. That's
Thanks to Not Overthinking, I believe I've become one of those podcast people, which is great because I can list it as one of my hobbies and therefore increase my prestige amongst my peers. Brackets, JK on the latter part. But
That's
in all
funny.
seriousness, thank you so much to both of you for keeping me sane during this pandemic and keep up with the great work. Well, thank you very much, Ruby Star 99.
That is funny.
You are indeed a star.
That was a really good joke.
And that's a good review.
All right, that's it for this week, and see you next time.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Apple Podcasts website if you're not using an iPhone. There's a link in the show notes.
If you've got any thoughts on this episode or any ideas for new podcast topics, we'd love to get an audio message from you with your conundrum, question, or just anything that we could discuss.
Yeah, if you're up for having your voice played on the podcast and your question being the springboard for our discussion, email us an audio file MP3 or voice note to hi@notoverthinking.com.
If you've got thoughts but you'd rather not have your voice played publicly, that's fine as well. Tweet or DM us at NOverthinking on Twitter, please.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.